So to Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey here to have another conversation that I'm hoping helps your business grow. Entrepreneurs come in all shapes and forms. We work in all different kinds of industries. Those of you that know me know that myself and my business partner, Matt Watson, are in the software as a service business, or perhaps providing services to those kinds of companies. Now, the software as a service, or SaaS industry as it's known, well, it's big, and it's been big for a while. It's where not all of, but a lion's share of venture capital flows into. There's a whole lot of people interested in doing it. There's very few that do it well. And we are going to talk about how to boldly lead your business to business SaaS company into a brave new world. So in order to do that, we did get a little help from the company I own, Fullscale, as today's sponsor of this episode of Startup Hustle. We help you build a software team quickly and affordably. Now, Fullscale isn't the only one that's going to give us an assist today. With me today, I've got Jeff Weiner, and Jeff is the CEO of Real Quantum from here in my hometown of Kansas City. Jeff, welcome to Startup Hustle.
Thanks, Matt. It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you today. Love the podcasts that you do.
Thank you. We love it too. So I guess we'll keep doing it, and that's probably a good approach for us. Now, no one can tell the story of a business better than the CEOs, the founders. So why don't we just go ahead and start there? Give us a little backstory about yourself, Real Quantum, and what brought you here?
Absolutely. So I've been in the software tech space for my whole career, and I spent a long time working for big companies. I was at AT&T, worked in the DC metro area for several years, and then relocated out to Kansas City. Didn't think we would stay here as a family. We think, because we don't have any family here, right? We get here, think, all right, we'll reload back, next promotion kind of thing. We've loved it. So we've been here quite a while, and it's a great community to raise a family. It was a great community to start a company. So did the big company thing for a while, and then moved to a really small tech firm here in town, and then really got the opportunity to make that transition. And we did a couple of things. We were doing services, custom software development mostly, transitioned to product because we decided we wanted to build a product around the IP that we had been developing for quite a while, and then basically giving away as part of our services to mostly enterprise, right? So it was all B2B, mostly enterprise, custom dev, system integration type work. Did that for a while. And then one of the great things that I've had that I've been very grateful for is that I've developed this great network of individuals. And so one of those people introduced me to a small group of individuals that are getting ready to start a company, and that was Real Quantum. And I had had some experience with some of the folks, and we're new to some of the others, and decided to make that switch. We did a successful exit for that last company. It was called Mersoft Networks, and that was sold off to one of the private equity firms here in Kansas City. And then I got to turn my full attention to Real Quantum. And basically what it is that it's like you said, software as a service company, B2B focus, specifically in commercial real estate, which is, and I'd love to talk about how this, a little bit more about that, is that CRE tech, commercial real estate tech, or prop tech, is exploding right now. A tremendous amount of VC money. There's all these special purpose acquisition companies, SPACs, that are showing up. Big money is moving into the space. So it's very, very cool place to be right now. But really what our founding team was back in the beginning, it's about 5 years ago, is that commercial real estate has been poorly served by tech. Half of that original group of people were experienced commercial real estate appraisers. The other half were like me, coming from the tech world. And we really decided that it was time to create a new product specifically in the valuation part of the space, which is this kind of invisible grease in the gears that makes the commercial real estate economy operate. And so it doesn't get much attention. Commercial real estate brokers, developers, they're the ones you see in the business journal things like that, right? The appraisal space doesn't get that much attention, but we saw a real need because it was so poorly served by tech, very manual process. And the commercial real estate appraisers that I was working with, they had done one of these before. And it was about 15 years prior. They had it had run its course. It was cool for the time. So I also had the benefit of working with a group of people that were experienced, and this was not their first startup. And so we operated in stealth mode for 2 years in 2016 and 17. Then we launched in the beginning of 2018. So we've been selling since then. And that takes us up to today.
Okay. So, we mentioned B2B as the column that will exist in for today's conversation. And when it comes to SaaS platforms, and I always like to throw in some simplicity for those that are listening, because I know not everyone listening is a tech entrepreneur, but there's lessons from everyone's story that apply to all industries. So B2B is business to business, B2C is business to consumer, and they are viewed quite differently when it comes to the approach that you take as to grow and build the company, as well as the desirability when it comes to investment, meaning investors, well, they don't like B2C as much as they like B2B. And while there are plenty of B2C SaaS platforms out there, some of that is driven by the fact that businesses, well, there's a necessity often, and then they have it's hard to get $8 a month out of a consumer sometimes, and it's not as difficult to get $400 a month out of a business. So,
right.
Some of that, and also, we talk about SaaS, SaaS, and that's defined software as a service, is a software distribution model in which a third-party provider hosts applications and makes them available to customers or clients over the internet. The customers of SaaS are most likely businesses or the end users of apps. So as Jeff has mentioned, his business provides solutions in the commercial real estate space, and that would make your clients and users commercial real estate agents or banks.
So our customer base are actually the biggest single group are commercial real estate appraisers. So for anybody that's bought or sold a house, the appraiser comes, takes pictures, measures, and then compares your house to 3 or 4 other houses in the neighborhood. You get a price, and you use that price when you're selling, when you're trying to get a mortgage, whatever. Right. On the commercial side, or I should say on the residential side, it's single family home, townhome, condo. That's it.
Yeah.
On the commercial side, it's strip mall, grocery store, movie theater, oil refinery,
office building,
everything in between.
Remarkably variable in what they can be worth and how, right?
And so, of course, the other big difference between the two, in addition to the diversity, is the fact that, of course, a commercial building is a business as opposed to a place you live. And so all those complexities are one of the major reasons why innovation has lagged in the space. But those are our primary ones. These commercial real estate appraisers, they're set up kind of like accountants, lawyers, lots of sole proprietors, and this kind of big cluster in the middle of there's lots of small, 5 to 10 person organizations, a smaller handful, a smaller group of maybe 10 to 50 people. And then there's a group of them that are national and global that operate as well. And many of them are very common. You see their billboards up because they do everything. They do development, property management, appraisal, et cetera. And so that's our main customer base. But then also lenders, right? Because they need to know how much properties are worth. Tax assessors, things like that.
So when it comes to leadership and growing and building your SaaS company, regardless of who you're serving, whether it's B2B or B2C. I mean, one of the things that you were alluding to there is, you have to solve a problem. You have to create some kind of, and by the way, lack of efficiency is a problem. So that's often what software as a service is doing. And I think as a leader of any type of SaaS company, clearly defining what the problem you're solving and making sure that your team, and look, that sounds like super simplistic, but I see a lot of people or talk to a lot of people, and I ask them after I talk, I say, have you really clearly defined what you're trying to do for you? Like everyone from yourself all the way down to the QA tester, and I'm a little surprised sometimes that it seems like they're giving directions to the team, but not necessarily helping them understand the why of the problem they're solving. Like what you're doing matters to these kind of people for these reasons. And I feel that once you begin to define that, you have now begun to potentially lead your SaaS company to a brighter, better future. Is that the right place to start?
Oh my gosh, there's so many places we could go. What you touched on,
I'm aware of that as well. We might go to several of them, but I had to start somewhere. And I think that the clarity of the mission and what you're doing, I employ almost 200 developers, and I just know from having been in the space for a decade that if the people that build your product don't truly understand why it's valuable and what problem it solves, then it's probably going to suck, just to be honest.
Right, because they're not going to make all those thousands of decisions that need to be made by autonomous individuals to be able to make the decisions that point you in the right direction. So absolutely. And that's a really good way of doing it. There's so many things in making something like this successful, but you're absolutely right. So the first thing is you got to be able to have a business model and a product market fit that makes sense. And then once you know where you're pointing, then you can get everybody rowing in the same direction. The challenge comes in though, and Matt, doing so much business with startups, you probably see this a lot, right? Is that we all want to get to the point where we figured out a product market fit. We figured out, all right, we're going in this direction, just hit the gas. But figuring out which direction you're going in takes a tremendous amount of discipline and science to get there. And so one of the things that I found that's really important, because we're still early stage, right? We're building our momentum. We've got some great things happening, but we're pretty early. And that is to also make sure that you've got individuals on your team who know that where we're going at this moment, maybe we're finding out where we're going.
Sure.
Right. So,
sure. Yeah.
Like, for example, there's the book that's pretty famous called Crossing the Chasm. And the author's name is escaping me for the moment. But the idea is that you capture a few early adopters. And that's really good. Getting those early adopters, they're very flexible. They are willing to put up with either missing features or glitches or something like that. But the way that you get from there to the mass is you have to cross this chasm. You have to survive long enough to get there. Figuring out how to cross the chasm from your early adopters to your mass market requires a lot of experimentation. And for example, the developers, where most of our money goes here at Real Quantum, our software engineers, is knowing that the current path is we believe these next set of features are going to help us capture this new group of customers. Do I know exactly, and I've had this conversation with other startups too, do we know exactly that, X hours makes this number of features, makes this number of dollars of revenue? No, we don't. But
no one does.
Right.
No one does.
Right.
They say people say you should know that, and then nobody knows.
Right.
Kind of like nobody.
Right.
It's kind of like nobody really knows how to spell entrepreneur without looking. It's okay. Yeah.
Right. Right. Thanks for spell check. Right. So that's really important. So as you gotta, because I agree, a leader, and this goes back to the beginning of time, right? You set a direction, you boldly set that direction, you support your team members, you bring new team members into the team that can help you fulfill that vision, you go. It's just that sometimes early on, or always early on, part of that vision is to figure out exactly where you're going. You got to make sure you have the right people that can help you get there that way.
Okay. So, and I think that still falls into that clarity of vision and mission. Now, you said there's one thing, and for those listening that want to lead is, and I see this mistake a lot. And now I'm a salesperson and a promoter at heart, according to most personality inventories that I've taken. But whenever I hear the word feature, I demand that we also discuss advantages and benefits. And I think that that's where a lot of early stage companies fall short when it comes to leadership. Is, people don't buy features, they buy benefits. And if you're going to build a feature, then as you mentioned, it needs to do a couple things. It needs to either retain users or bring in new ones. And I think that oftentimes when it comes to leading a SaaS company, I hear a lot of people talk about features, and it sounds like it's like basically shit that they want to put in there that doesn't, like you mentioned, it doesn't have a lot of science behind it. It's not like, is this going to help us keep people in? Is it going to help us sign people up? Is it going to help us generate revenue? And if the answer is no, then that's not something you should probably be focusing your time on. Right. Because in the end, your features have to provide some kind of advantage and really in the end benefit. And it took me a while as an adult sales professional to really, truly understand that. I always tell this story about going to buy a camera at Best Buy, and I'm talking to the high school kid that's working there, and he's just going down this list of things that are features, and like A, B, C, D, and I just looked at him I let him spit it all out, and I said, will this take really professional looking pictures of my kids on Christmas? And he goes, yes. I said, all right, I'll take it. That was the benefit. Right. That was all right. That was all that I cared about at that moment. I already knew it was in my price range, or I wouldn't have asked about it. But all of the things that he mentioned, I didn't care about a dual-sided mirrorless blah, blah, blah. I cared about the output of what it did. So I think when it comes to the leadership of your team, your product, and your sales, that clearly defining the benefits. And like, as the founder of Gigabook, I remember I was so excited to create all of this efficiency, and I thought people would love it. And then I quickly realized that they really just liked peace of mind. Like, that was the reason that people bought and subscribed to the product, because they liked the peace of mind of knowing that while they were providing, if they were a solopreneur, while they were providing services, let's just say that you're a massage therapist. If your massage therapist answers calls and replies to emails to take appointments in the middle of your session, you're not going back. But think about that. If you're booked up all day, you don't want to, you're like, oh my God, how much business do I have to hire an assistant? And so that peace of mind, well, without peace of mind, nothing else has much flavor. So, sometimes the not so obvious, like, because you could say, okay, well, the advantage of online booking is you can get more sales, you can collect payments, you can send reminders. Yeah. Okay. That's great. That's great. But what's the real benefit of it? You're not going to go crazy.
Right, you're not going to go crazy.
You don't have to answer 10 million calls.
Right, yeah. You're not going to worry that there's business loss because you're missing a phone call.
Sure, yeah. And then I would think that in the case of Real Quantum, and I'm not going to pretend to know a ton about this, but I know from just talking to different people and relationships I've had with folks in the commercial real estate, both on the tech side and the buildings themselves, is there seems to be a remarkable amount of inefficiency with paperwork and just like all kinds of stuff. So what's the bright shining star of benefit that Real Quantum gives?
So you're absolutely right. So we did some research early on in the process, and we found out 82% of people that have some kind of valuation for commercial real estate in their job description are basically paper-based. The modern version of paper and pencil is Excel and Word. And that wasn't just small operations. And you assume that like the biggest banks and everything have all this stuff that they've custom built. Those giant banks, and I talked to a couple of them, and what they say is that they run a lot of the decision-making for commercial real estate through Excel. They, in fact, one bank executive was telling me that they hire these hotshot quantitative analysis types from Ivy League schools, and they've got a turnover problem because they come in thinking they're going to be working for this worldwide banking organization, and they spend 12 hours a day typing stuff into spreadsheets and then fixing their formulas and things because it's all spreadsheets, right? And then they quit and they do something else. They go, I don't know, do investment banking or something. So it's a huge problem. And so the first core thing that we do that's discrete is that we save them time. Really do. And we say that in terms of we can get our customers to be 50% more productive. So when I think about what you said, Matt, and talk about peace of mind, I think when you're a B2B company, when you're any kind of company, but B2B is my expertise, is that that peace of mind, that one thing is different so often with the different types of customers you sell to. So one example that we have is we sell to commercial real estate fee appraisers, people that banks hire and spend a couple $1,000 a pop to get a real estate appraisal. And then there's tax assessors who are on the other side who collect taxes, right? The most important thing for a commercial real estate appraiser is all of my data is all in the same place. And because of that, I save all of this time. My peace of mind is that I'm not going back constantly and redoing the same stuff or introducing errors and wasting my time. And that's a big deal. For a tax assessor, in their case, they're all totally concerned with making sure that when some commercial property owner comes in for a tax appeal, that they're always applying a fair and equitable treatment of taxation policy to everybody. They're not worried about making more money because they're all salaried employees of the government, right? They're not there to make money. They're there to make sure everything is working well, fair and equitable treatment. So to them, their ability to collect all the data in one place and be able to not make mistakes or not spend time fixing mistakes, their peace of mind is that they can ensure that they've done a quality, thorough job to apply fair and equitable treatment of taxation to all commercial property owners.
Okay. So we've talked about the clarity. We talked about defining the benefits of your product. Now, look, those things right there, those are great. That's great for your team. It's great for your product team. It's now, here's the thing. If you don't ever sell anything, you're not boldly leading anything. You are a company that does something that has yet to really be validated. Sales cures ails. And the further you get down the road, the more you got to build them, or you will begin to lose belief from investors, employees, and invariably you're going to run out of money. So there's that part. So when it comes to leading a B2B SaaS company, personally, it's never too early to start marketing, selling, and finding users. And I'll tell you what, if maybe the biggest mistake of all that I see any SaaS company make is waiting too long to figure that out. The people I know that I've talked to on and off this show that are really successful, they started that whole process really early. They were beginning to experiment, create content, work on what their customer acquisition costs were, really refining a lot of that stuff. Because that begins to define the company's mission in many ways. Because, and by the way, I hate this culture of celebration around how much money a company has raised. I don't give a shit how much money you've raised. Let's talk about how much revenue you're generating. Right. I mean, honestly, if and earmuffs, if you don't want to hear me say the F word, but if I see another fucking list that talks about hey, here's all the people that raised a bunch of money, oh, great. That's great. But who's making money? Who's creating revenue? Because that's the sticky product that creates jobs, that builds companies, that creates generational wealth for founders and investors. Right. So when it comes to sales, I want to talk about that for a minute. So what have you guys done at Real Quantum and how are you leading your sales and everything towards mega revenue?
So I was listening to your sales podcast that you did recently. and where you said sales cures ails. And I was thinking, I was especially interested in it because, what you were saying is when it comes to full scale, right? You try to have a certain type of customer. You're not going to get lots of little customers. You want to have, I think you said 13,000 a month average.
Well, that's what we do average right now,
right?
but yeah, but only certain types of clients or customers are able to sustain that for more than a very short period of time.
Right. So we did like you're suggesting. We started out even before we had the product. We were developing content and a marketing strategy, and that's where I got my start when I first joined the team, and that was critical. First of all, we were educating. When you have an 82% manual product market, it doesn't mean we didn't have any other competitors, but clearly our biggest competitor was Microsoft Excel.
Sure.
There's a big chunk of education that has to occur to inform your marketplace about this new, better way of seeing the world. And at the same time, it was critical because we had to experiment, right? We were trying out messaging. We were trying out seeing what works, seeing how to talk to individual customer segments. We would talk to anybody we could to give us advice about product features, to really identify what resonated the most with them. And that was absolutely crucial as we were in that first 2 years of stealth mode. And then we just started to sell in the early part of 2018, because even then we started out with our MVP. And one of the reasons why you have to do an MVP is you make sure you don't build anything you don't need to, because people can talk all day long about what they think they might like, but until you actually ask for their credit card number or a purchase order, then you find out what they really like. So you do all that marketing up front to try and educate the customer and then learn. But then when it comes time to actually starting to sell the product, you have to sell very iteratively too, to see what resonates so that you can build that momentum over time.
I created a term for this, and I don't know which episode you were listening to, but I have built the word democation, and that's demonstration and education. And if your content and your message manages to accomplish both of those at the same time, well, not only is it really palatable, because there's a lot of people that want to see what your product does. So you can demonstrate that, but at the same time, and this is what kills me, because, you go to someone's website or something, they're like, watch our product demo. You open it up and it's like a 24-minute YouTube video of someone's computer screen.
Right. Back to features, right?
And look, if you move the cursor over here and you click this button that says file, then it'll open a drop down. And you're like, my God, no one's ever going to watch this. Now, at the same time, you could say, look, I could show you a whole lot of stuff that's really mundane. Let's skip past that. Here's the meat and potatoes of what we sell, and this is why it's good for you. And you can be dropping the benefits along the way, and you're demonstrating and educating. Do not assume just because someone don't assume that your users know anything about the industry that they actually work in. When it comes to the benefits that you provide, it's shocking.
So what you said before, Matt, you were talking about sell the benefits and not the features. That 27-minute or whatever video is all about the features, not the benefits.
Yeah,
right. That's so critical. So, all right, a little bit of a tangent.
You could have a 60-second video that just literally. You could have a 30-second video that said this is the benefits of what it does. And like I said, it's like you got to think out of the normal stuff too, because you talk about the messaging and why it matters. Well, with Gigabook, we were selling peace of mind. Gigabook, peace of mind at your business. And here's the thing is, you put that in an ad or a promo or something, okay, people want to click that. You don't sign the customer within the advertising image. You need to get them to go somewhere to take some kind of action and do something. So you talk about messaging, and anybody that owns a business has, I make this, I don't like making assumptions, but I make the assumption that all business owners at some point are tormented by what they've created with their business, because all businesses have problems. So you talk about peace of mind at your business, that gets my attention. So, and now you can democate and say, look, this is what it does, and this and this and this and that. And by the way, during democation, you can also begin to filter out some of the clients, customers, and users. Not all leads are good, people.
Right.
Like some people, I boost my lead volume by 800%. I'm like, okay, right. What did you boost your closing ratio by?
Yeah.
Because if it didn't go up proportionally, you're probably costing yourself more because you're wasting your time chasing opportunities. It's kind of like you talked about with the MVP. Like the purpose of that is to get it out there and let people tell you what they're going to actually pay for. Not like, oh, well, I'd love it if I had this magical unicorn that came by and brought us cupcakes every day at lunch. Cool. How much would you pay for that? Well, probably nothing. Okay, well, then we shouldn't try to build that.
Yeah, I could use a cupcake unicorn.
I could. We all could. Jeff, honestly, Jeff, and before I forget, and before I tell you the real story of the cupcake unicorn, today's episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Fullscale.io, helping you build a software team quickly and affordably. So you really got to give the listener something to really hang on to after the ad read, like a cupcake unicorn. But everyone's going to be disappointed because.
So can I hire a cupcake unicorn from Fullscale?
No. Unfortunately, but
how about a bourbon unicorn? That would be really nice.
That's a real thing. Yeah. And I think you can actually get a Saint Bernard or something with a barrel around its neck. I don't know what those dogs have in the barrel. I know it's like some kind. It might be bourbon to keep you warm.
It's bourbon, right? It's to warm you up. I don't know.
Yeah, or Matt Watson and I have created a fictional founders club that we call Tears and Beers. It's a no judgment kind of place where founders and entrepreneurs can either show up and get drunk, or you can cry, or you can do both. So, but like I mentioned, business owners and leaders are really in the business of trying to solve problems and trying to lead things forward. And now here's the thing: it's like I said, if you really want to lead your company, sell more. Figure out how to sell more, figure out how to grow that revenue, and figure out how to do it in a hurry, because there's nothing else that will get attention of, well, you either become self-sufficient or you have a strong enough signal flare over your business that investors see where you're at and they want to put money into it. So, I just see so many people wait. And I'm like, you're not in the business of building the product. You're in the business of selling the product. Because if you don't lead to sales, you will lead to bankruptcy. Right.
So when it comes to when you're talking about leadership for this kind of company, is that in a SaaS company, just like any other tech company, you've got the engineer, right, who's probably the CTO. And engineers have a tendency, which is great in terms of quality, right? Always building. It's never done. Right? There's always something more to be done. And when you ask them what it does, I've found this to be the case, is engineers make terrible salespeople for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons is because they always see what they want to do next. They're always completely dissatisfied, almost dismissive of the product that's actually on the shelf for sale, because they'd rather talk about all the cool stuff they're working on. And selling B2B, certainly technology, I've spent a lot of time going to sales calls with that kind of engineer. And they're wonderful when it comes to demos and impressing them with our technical prowess. But when they spend all their time talking, you have to worry about them not spending all of their time talking about what's coming next instead of what they can do for this customer today. It's hard. But
I've got a leadership tip I want to tack onto that. Okay. Quick. Yeah. I want to say avoid gold plating.
Yes.
Right? So gold plating is a term. Is like what Jeff's talking about is okay. So, and I have a joke that goes with it. How many lead software engineers does it take to build anything? At least 10. It takes 1 to actually build it and 9 to say, well, I could have done that better. And that joke applies to a lot of different industries. Lead guitarists are a good one, and bands and a whole lot of other stuff. But the point is, if you stop to gold plate everything that you build and make, you're going to end up with a bunch of shit that's gold plated that no one wants. And especially in the early stages, it's important. I'm never concerned about the elegance of anything. Does it work?
So,
I
Matt,
mean,
I think that's one of the genius parts of the MVP concept.
yeah,
So, a minimum viable product, which differentiates, it's different than a beta. A beta kind of product is a product that does a bunch of things, and a lot of them don't work very well. The goal of the MVP is to do only a couple of things, but all those things work, just a very
yeah,
limited. And the Eric Ries book that talks about this, uses the example of Zappos back in the early days of the internet. They were wondering whether or not they could sell shoes on the internet, because people are used to going to the store and trying them on. And so their MVP was they set up a small commerce page, and if somebody bought a pair of shoes, the owner would, the company founder would drive to the shoe store, buy those shoes, and mail them to them. Right. So no infrastructure at all, certainly no gold plating, but it was really just to find out that MVP was to find out that one thing: would people buy shoes on the internet? Because nobody was. Now, clearly they do now. And so the leadership comes in, and understanding the market is to be able to identify what you would consider gold plating versus what's a critical feature to capture a new segment of the market. Right.
yeah. Well, gold plating is expensive, and it also is a bad habit to get into because I mean, it depends on where you're at. And if you're in the business of gold plating, then sure, it's a great thing. But now when we talk about boldly leading, I'm as the CEO of Full Scale, I was our first salesperson as well, and there's someone out there listening that's going, man, they're talking about boldly leading a SaaS company, but now they're talking about sales. But once again, without sales, nothing else. Until a business sells something, nothing else occurs.
There's
Right?
no way that you can lead in the first, say, $1 million of annual recurring revenue. There's no way you can lead effectively, if you're not also selling, because you don't have close enough pulse of what the customers are saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
I actually use the pulse statement a lot as CEOs and leaders you need to keep your finger on the pulse of business and what customers are saying, what they're asking for. For me at Full Scale, our product is people and the output that we create. And I have to keep my finger on the pulse of the business because I have to know what's coming a year from now. And thinking about that, like you just look at little tech trends. Like when we started Full Scale, I'll give you an example. Everyone was asking for Angular front-end developers, and now we never hear that. And I noticed this huge trend where people were switching to React. And I said, man, so not only did we have to go search for people that were doing it, we also created internal training programs and different things that begin to educate our existing employees. Because one of the things at Full Scale that we'll run into is someone might work for a client or a team for a year, and then that project ends or something, and then all of a sudden they're in transit. And we favor the long-term placement over just a placement. So sometimes we use these little gaps now, and I'm getting super technical here, but if you're really good at JavaScript, you'll figure out all the different flavors of it and learn how to do it, but maybe you just need a little practice. So, and we're currently doing the same thing with different types of data. I mean, just machine learning, data analytics, predictive analysis. So we create these little projects that we own that benefit us, or we build our own company management system using excess capacity of people that were in really transit.
Because what you're doing is you're investing in the people, and hopefully that results in better tenure.
Well, and also keeping them busy too, because no one wants to sit there and twiddle their thumbs all day. So with that, we shaped the things we built, or the tools we made, or the stuff we did, to also use the technology that everyone was trending towards. So, and our office is in the Philippines. So whether you know this or not, folks, there's different parts of the world that have a tendency to have massive directional motivation towards different types of tech. Like there's parts of the world where the PHP developer is everywhere and you can't find a .NET developer. And then you go to Western Europe or Eastern Europe, and they're everywhere and not the other way around. So there's a lot of that. But you got to, as a leader, you have to almost have that licked finger and holding it up in the air to see which way the wind is blowing. Because if it passes you, and catching up is hard. It takes time.
So Matt, I know this is a little bit in the weeds, but you mentioned about Angular to React. What are you seeing now for front end?
It's still React, man. Like everybody, it's all React. And that's what everyone wants. And that's what everyone's asking for. And the reason that understanding the directional nature of that is market inefficiency. There's like too many buyers and not enough sellers in that regard. So it creates these really like lopsided, weird supply and demand problems. And we already have that with tech providers. Like in the United States, there's about 400,000 open IT jobs right now, which is part of why our company grew so fast. So, but so part of that leadership too with your SaaS company is, I believe, so I see a lot of people that have started a business and they call us up and they say, okay, I got a SaaS platform and it's built with something weird. And I say weird like that, like the 27th most popular programming platform on GitHub. And, and you're like, why did you choose that? And they're like, well, my neighbor, he's a software engineer. He told me this is really where it's going. I'm like, and they're like, well, what do you think about that? And I'm like, I think it was a terrible decision. And I really will. I'll tell someone that. I'm known for my candor, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. Fuck it. But the people that I talk to appreciate that. And he's like, what? I said, you might want to reconsider this because you're never going to find people to work on this. You're going to spend as much time finding people to work on this strange thing you've built that no one has any experience with and no one understands besides the one person that built it. Right. It's not scalable. And so, some of that is like, and that's the same thing. Like, so everyone built SaaS products and they did a whole lot of back-end stuff. And now everyone wants to make them shiny and polished. So the front end developer and the demands for that, I mean, people, it's funny too, because people ask the silliest questions, because technically a senior developer should have a minimum of at least 5 years of experience, probably more like 7. People be like, I'm looking for a senior React developer. I'm like, cool, I will give you Zuckerberg's phone number because he's the only one.
Right.
And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's been out for 6 years and no one even used it until 2.5 years ago. So there are no senior people to do that. So, it's just like weird expectations and things so I think part of leading and we did get in the weeds there, but that's okay. We're talking about SaaS. We can do that. Right. So in this regard, but it's understanding like, okay, so it's one thing when you have a 5-person company, but now you grow, and now all of a sudden you need 2 large. I talked to big companies that have painted themselves in the corner with this. They get like, we got a $200 million round, and now we can't find anybody to work on this thing because we have 30 people, but God, it took us 6 years to find them, and we are overpaying them just to make sure they don't go somewhere else. Right. And that's another thing too, is like, you can't create experience. Like you can create experience over time, but you can't you can't make more senior anythings because there's only so many in the bucket until the next year rolls around and there's some more. Right. And that's a problem with tech companies.
And so, but that's one of the things that's, I think, forced us to create a pretty good, have to create a good experience because it's a seller's market for software engineers, clearly, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so creating, and it's not just, the stereotypical gourmet meals and foosball tables and beanbag chairs that people talk about, but it's really working hard to craft an environment that people will enjoy working in, that can do their best work. And
they have to be challenged. And right. One thing we've learned with hiring, and once again, I've hired hundreds of software engineers, and it's a business I'm in. And, we go for the top 10%. So we're not the cheapest, but we're the best. And the thing that I've learned is it's not with that type of employee, they want to do interesting things. They want to be challenged. They want to feel like they're moving forward. They like to do cutting edge stuff. Like I said, they really want to be challenged and build cool stuff. The thing you're never going to get is a guy or a gal with 10 years of experience. And you're like, hey, you're going to build WordPress landing pages all day. No, that
Right.
person's going to quit in
Right.
about if they even take the job. So,
Yeah.
and I think the same thing goes for all your employees. I think that people in general are best. We want to be challenged. We want to do interesting things with other interesting people for interesting companies that are preferably doing things that matter.
Right. Right. And we have to be careful to not stray to the side of the sort of the dark or negative side of some of these tech companies, right? Like Uber and others who developed their reputation for not being good places to work. But our belief at Real Quantum absolutely is two things. One of them is to create an environment that people genuinely enjoy working for all the reasons you mentioned, and not just the engineers, but everybody, because it forces everybody to make sure, if they weren't predisposed to it already, because you have to do that to keep the talent, and then you build from there. So the other thing that we've done, which I think is unique to a certain extent, right? One of the ways that we've solved the talent gap is we've looked for opportunities to bring people in who would not have normally been in the company. So here in Kansas City, there's one of those boot camps called Launch Code. And we've recruited several people out of that. We know that lots of people go in with aspirations because they see the money or whatever to go. I'm going to go to Launch Code, and I'm going to go for a couple of months, and then I'm going to be a $100,000 a year developer. And I was like, it doesn't work that way.
Probably not. Probably
So
not.
some small percentage of them make it through, and we've cultivated relationships with them. We've tried to do some work with them and support them. As in the process, we've been able to hire several people who would have most likely been passed by the quote unquote normal tech firms, and certainly the large ones here in the metro. And one of the guys on my team who he's now our chief data and security officer, was responsible for HR and recruiting for a long time because we're a startup. We wear lots of hats. And he coined the term that I love. And it's that we love to find people who are one break short of awesome. And that's what we've done with those. And we've found QA, found fledgling developers, customer success team members, and it feels like a little bit more maintenance on the upfront side to get these individuals coming in, because they're to a large extent they're an empty vessel. Right? They need to learn a lot. But on the other hand, they're also really energized about being in this cool new industry. And a couple of them have already moved on to do other things. And we feel not only have we gotten our money's worth, but we've actually advanced the community. So we've increased the population of technology employees in the marketplace to fill a couple of those 400,000 openings. And so we can do it both for ourselves and
And we're back after a short technical delay. And I got to tell you what, that's the third time that's happened to me this week. And for those of you at Restream.io, you're about to lose my business. Sorry, had to vent a little there. I have had a problem with Restream kicking me in and out of this platform all week, and I don't appreciate it. No, it's annoying because it just is. I got to tell you what, it's so now we were talking about the culture and the growth of employees, and I think that that's a good place for us to begin to come to a conclusion on yet another episode of Startup Hustle, brought to you by Fullscale.io, helping you build a software team quickly and affordably. That's part of what we were talking about. Now, at Fullscale, we rarely have people leave. And there's a couple reasons for that. It's a really simple formula. One, I pay you more than the market does. So that part of it doesn't hurt. And, we're really specific, like we alluded to earlier, about who we work with. I think that one of the crown jewel measuring sticks of a business or even an individual with your personal brand is the ability to decide who you're going to work with, because not all clients and customers are good. And for us, our company and our employees have a belief in our leadership that we'll do things to put the company in a good place. Now, 2020 was a huge test of this for business leaders in general, where we had to make a lot of tough decisions, like, hey, we bounced back. We're actually doing more business now than we were when COVID hit. That doesn't mean there weren't some down times along the way. We left a lot of money on the table along the way, and we're forced to make tough decisions. Right now I pay $40,000 a month for office space that nobody uses. And, there's just like a lot of things. Yeah. I mean, we had 200 people coming to work every day. We have 2 floors of a high-rise building in an IT park, and it's vacant. And, you have to make tough decisions for the now and the later. And, while in the market we were in, a lot of our competitors were forcing salary reductions and stuff like that. We ate it ourselves. So I didn't make a whole lot of money last year. And you know what? I've been doing this stuff, meaning entrepreneurship and leadership, for a long time. You can't complain about that unless you're going to complain about the good years where you do really well. And so here in Kansas City, there's some business leaders, and one of which is actually a relative of mine. His name's Terry Dunn. And Terry and his family owned a huge construction company called J.E. Dunn. But it was talking to Terry once, and he said, Matt, the big part about leading especially a big company, is you have to understand the times when you have to put it all on your shoulders and bear the weight of that downward pressure, but be aware enough to know that when you don't need to do that, you have to instead turn that back around, and it's everyone else's victory. Right. So I've really embraced stuff like that, like leaders eat last, and all that. If you're at our office in the Philippines, we have this big kitchen and cafeteria. We serve meals for our employees so they don't have to go out and find them, just so they don't have to go out and get them. But I eat last. They're always wanting me to go first. I'm like, no. And I'll sit there for 75 minutes and talk to everyone else until I'm positive no one else is left in line. And as a leader, I think that that's important. You have to begin to, if you lose the faith of the people that are in you, that are in your business, it's over. And, I had done I had made a lot of deposits before, personal and leadership type deposits, doing things to instill belief and faith in what we were doing and the people that worked there. So when 2020 came around, and all of a sudden I'm like, hey, look, this shit's crazy, everyone. And I can't tell you what's going to happen in a couple months, but we've always done the right thing. We'll continue to do the right thing. Sit tight, relax as much as you can, and let's keep doing what we do. Because we can't control a virus. We can't control the government. We can't control market conditions and a lot of other stuff. What we can control is our attitude, our ability, and our sense of team and unity.
Right. It sounds like, Matt, you've got a great mentor in Terry Dunn.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to grow up around Terry and Peggy. That's and his wife's the mayor of the city that I live in. Right. So that's been fortunate.
Yeah. The need to eat last. Yeah. In so many ways. I absolutely agree with that. Also, there's a couple of things. There's no job that I would ask anybody else to do that I wouldn't do myself.
True.
There's no time when I would be willing. I had to find out early in my career that I couldn't work the longest of everybody in my team because I would never sleep, especially in IT. But there's no time that I asked somebody to stay up and do an all-nighter that I wouldn't do the same. And related to what you said before, I've always felt that, and my team deserves to hear this again soon. I haven't said it for a while. If we screw up, it's my fault. If we succeed, it's your fault.
Yeah,
right?
and the whole concept of extreme ownership calls for leaders to understand that there's no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders. And I do that a lot in our own company, because sometimes we'll fail at certain things, and as leaders and managers, sometimes you want to blame the downstream. And while that can be okay, maybe like for brief moments in time, really in the end, it has to quickly matriculate back upstream, and you have to start saying, okay, is this my fault?
Right.
Because we're continually not getting where we want to be or
Right.
doing what we want to do. And it's it's only not your fault. Well, it's probably your fault.
Right. There are the only problems in business are leadership problems.
Yeah. I mean, they really are. And that's, now leaders and founders and entrepreneurs, we're often ego driven. And, in my book, Balance Me, it says in the intro, not even on the first page, if you're not willing to admit that you're likely your own biggest problem, just put the book back, because I'm not going to be able to help you, and you're not going to like the book. So do us both a favor and put it back. But that's really in the end. And I think that, we can end on that note. Now, I say end on that note, I end my episodes of Startup Hustle. I say my episodes because I'm not the only host of Startup Hustle, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Make sure you tune in for Andrew Morgan's episodes about e-commerce, or Lauren Conaway's Innovate Her Hour here on Startup Hustle. While you're out on the internet, did you hear that we started a TV show? Because we did. And it's live February 1st. It will be live by the time this episode comes out. So if you're still listening, come on over to YouTube, learn more about the real story of entrepreneurship, much like the Startup Hustle podcast. We aren't going to sugarcoat it, people. We're going to talk to you about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, I end my episodes with the Founders Freestyle, where I give my guests an opportunity to offer advice to founders, share an experience as a founder, or maybe just make your closing statements and arguments for today's episode. So, Jeff, I hand you thy microphone.
Thank you, Matt. Really appreciated the time to talk with you today, and love what you're doing. I look forward to listening to more and catching the Startup Hustle TV. And I'm still waiting for that bourbon unicorn.
Yeah. Are those your closing statements? I think that's fair. So, overall, I think when it comes to some of the things we talked about today, and they were at times sales centric, but I think sales is a big part of leadership when it comes to a B2B company, because like I've said so many times, and I certainly didn't invent the phrase "sales cures ails." It does. Sell more stuff, and you find that many of the problems and issues that are nagging and keeping you up at night, they melt away. I've said in the past, money is a soft pillow, meaning it can help you sleep at night, and it can help you ignore some things that might demand immediate attention without it. And if you're trying to build something that's bigger than you need the sales, you need the revenue, you also need the people. So it's an interesting balance. And much like the mythical cupcake unicorn we talked about, you can actually achieve the things that we talked about. And by the way, if you do have a cupcake unicorn, we want to know all about that too. So go to startuphustle.xyz and fill out the form to be a guest. Make sure to put in the notes that you know all about the cupcake unicorn, and I'll at least know that you listened to this episode. So, Jeff, I got to get out of here, so I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Matt. Have a good day.